Sometimes God, He just amazes you with the way He includes you in things He's doing. I remember in the prayer meetings that started at the Elmwood Avenue Church of God in 1992, there were two things that were born out of those long-going years of prayer for our city, our generation, for our nation, and for this state, South Carolina. But two of the things that came out of that, one was Christ Central was born on May the 18th of 1997. About 8 o'clock in the morning on that Sunday morning, we had our first service as Christ Central. The second thing that happened on the same day was the Tony Evans crusade that came out of those prayer meetings. It was taking place in the Williams-Brice Stadium. And so the two things that were born to the prayers that were lifted up for our generation were that we would find ways to help those who could not help themselves, to find ways to encourage those who could not change their circumstances or fix their situations. And so Christ Central was born at our first service on the corner of Main Street and Elmwood in downtown Columbia. And then that evening, the first service for Dr. Evans, and Dr. Tony Evans, we had reserved in front of the podium the 150 seats for the Elmwood Avenue Church of God, where all this was born. And so thinking about how God sent 40,000 people there, and so many of them came for all kinds of things in the altar that night, seeking God. I think of the miracles that took place. One of them was a young man that was a young artist out of the church there in Texas. It was Kirk Franklin. And Kirk was a very popular artist out of the Oak Cliff Bible Church. And so I just mentioned to Dr. Evans, man, it sure would be nice one day if Kirk Franklin's ever in Columbia or in the area, in the Southeast, could stop by for one of the homeless services. And so one Sunday morning, Kirk Franklin shows up at the Christ Central in its earliest days there on Main Street. He was in shock that he was sent to a homeless service with all of his buses and all of the many different people in his team. And several of the people in our services were just as shocked because when Kirk got there, everybody was wanting to know, is this really you, Kirk Franklin? And then he was wanting to know, did they really send me to a place like this? And what God did was use that morning to show that regardless of your stardom, regardless of the things that you are gifted to do and so popular at, God will include you and rescue in those who have not found their stardom yet, maybe not even found where a stardom could be born. But God used Kirk Franklin to speak life into some people there. And the ministry's reputation began to spread far and wide. Our second Christ Central location was in Aiken, South Carolina. And so in those early morning services, many of the homeless also worked at day labor and jobs for hire and things like that, agencies across this capital city. And one morning in Aiken, South Carolina, one of the job sites, a foreman was there waiting on the vans to arrive with the day labor. And as they got out of the vans, they were singing the praise songs from the day before at Christ Central service. And usually when the work vans arrived, they weren't singing. They had a lot of other things going on, but it wasn't about worship. So that morning he asked me, he said, what's happened to you guys? What is going on here? And he said, well, if you had been where we were yesterday, we were at the Christ Central service, early morning service on Sunday. They serve breakfast and they have this great time of worship. And then they have people from different churches that come and pray with us and talk with us. And I don't know, we were just trying to remember all the songs and we were singing them on the way down here today from Columbia to Aiken. And so the foreman kind of dismissed that. And the second van arrives from a different day labor agency. And when they got out, they were singing songs too. And so he goes over and asks him, he said, my goodness, what has happened? What are you guys doing? And they said, well, if you'd been to Christ Central yesterday, where we were in Columbia, you'd be singing too. You never realize how the message travels about what God is doing in your presence when all you're doing is finding ways to worship and praise Him. But the third truck came. And when the third truck came, it was another fellow foreman. And so he's getting out and he's singing. And the foreman asked him, he said, "What is going on?" He said, "Did you go to Christ Central too?" He said, "No, but I know where they are. They're in Columbia, South Carolina. And I know about their ministry because I've already heard about it." And he said, "Well, can you find me a way to get in touch with them? Because I want one here in Aiken. I want a Christ Central in Aiken." So the second location for Christ Central was there on Richland Avenue in Aiken. And it was in the old restaurant building that was literally collapsing. And it was on the campus of the old Heart of Aiken Motel, which is today where the big Walmart shopping center and complexes all are. So when I get there that morning to meet Brian Widener, he was the first director of our second mission station. And when Brian came out and he met me in front of this building, it looks like it's going to fall down any minute. And he said, "Are you Pastor Jimmy?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, this is where I feel like God's called us to start a ministry for the needy in our area, because it's close to Graniteville, and most of the population in Aiken County live between Aiken and North Augusta. So I just feel like this is the main thoroughfare, and this is where we need to start." I said, "Brian, I don't think that building would be a good building, because the ceiling had collapsed and was laying in the floor, and it was all the ceiling tile. It was growing green moss, and it was about 1.5 feet in oozy mud that had been washed in from the parking lot above it. It's rusted off one of the back doors and just flowed into the building. It just filled it up." And he walked out in the middle of that, sloshing in that oozy mud with the ceiling tile growing moss on it. And he stood in the middle of that big room and he said, "Pastor Jimmy, I feel strongly this is where God wants us to start. I'm willing to start anywhere where God will move to help people that cannot help themselves." And I said, "I joined my faith with you." And I walked out in the middle of the same mud, and we prayed and asked God to help us to know how to turn that building around. So today, one of our busiest mission stations is the Aiken Christ Central, which has grown. Many other mission stations across South Carolina have come out of that mission station. And some of our directors have been beyond anything I could have ever imagined or known to ask God for, because their creativity and their engagement of the churches in Aiken. One church would send as many as 100 to 120 people to volunteer in that mission station on the kids' clubs meetings and things like that. But going back to that beginning, we shoveled out all that mud, got all that mess out of there, cleaned that building up, and we were paying $1,500 a month to rent what was a fallen down building. But we just kept chipping away at it, using everything that we had to make possible the hope needed for a church. And then the Easter Sunday that it was dedicated, when we got there with all the different people who came that morning, when it came time for the sermon, they asked me if I would preach that service that day. And I went up to the podium, and all of a sudden 2 motorcycles pull up to the front door, revving their engines. 2 guys got off, very motorcycle dressed, and came in the side door to the building, went straight to the restroom, both of them, and stayed in there the entire service. I never saw them come out. At the end of the service, we came to the point where we offered the opportunity for anybody that wanted prayer, anybody that had a need, that we would pray with them. All of a sudden, 2 guys come out of the bathroom to go back to their motorcycles, and just as each one got to one of the aisles down toward the front, the first one turned and came down front to be prayed for, and the second one. They were 2 brothers. One had just gotten out of jail for drug dealing, and they were literally checking each other out to make sure they weren't wired or they weren't representing something else to get them in trouble, each other. That morning, their mother had been one of the ones from a visiting church that came there for that opening service because she had been praying for her children so long, and their addictions had taken them so far from church and the things of God, and yet she never stopped praying for her children. That morning, she was in that service when her two sons came down to the altar right in front of her. She never saw it coming. She never knew. They didn't know she was there. She didn't know they were there. But all of a sudden, in front of everybody, God answered her prayer. God began to deal in those two young men. One of those brothers went on to be the second director of that Christ Central in Aiken. It's amazing how God literally opened up for the children, the kids clubs, for all of the different children that were coming, the ministry that grew so huge. Then when the train wreck took place in Graniteville, it was the Aiken mission station who went down to help in that community. And as they were working among the community, we realized how many people were suffering and how many people in their poverty and their need did not have resolve or resolutions to their situations. And so God put it in the heart of our director, Ms. Judy Floyd, to seek help for Graniteville. We purchased the buildings that the train wrecked into and the track where the train ran off of and the switch that caused the train wreck. Christ Central has all of those today, still in place, right there in Graniteville. But in the buildings that were there is the giant big building today that is called Hope Center. And it is reaching out to provide help for the last 15 years to all of those people in the Graniteville area who need hope. Much different types of helps and hopes have been brought to those communities through the Graniteville Christ Central that was an outgrowth of the Aiken Christ Central. And then that one mission station gave birth to 5 different locations. And then they gave birth to the volunteers that came and wanted to do similar things in other communities, the New Ellington Christ Central, and then the Wagner Christ Centrals. A lot of different things grew out of what it was like to let God include you in the helping of the neighbors that could not help themselves on those days. You can only imagine the poverty on the west side of Aiken. Aiken is known as a retirement center, place for the wealthy, place for all kinds of horse activities, and a lot of great things. But in the shadows of that, some of the greatest poverty in South Carolina. And there, God chose to come, and so a lot of those people, they were going to some of the largest churches and the finest places and enjoying life, their retirements and a lot of other things, became volunteers at trying to help a neighbor who could not help themselves that day. I just love the way God does that. Let him include you in something he wants to do to help both you and those in front of you. It's an awesome thing to be included.